Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Mortgage Coach Tuesday interview. Every Tuesday, we are here interviewing amazing mortgage professionals, amazing authors, amazing speakers, people that will engage and inspire you. My name is Dave Savage. I'm the CEO of Mortgage Coach. Hopefully, you have connected with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and everybody on this call, you're all Mortgage Coach members, so you understand this concept that as mortgage coaches, delivering mortgage advice in a transactional format, not our way of doing business. We're here to make sure every time a family gets into mortgage debt, they get graphs and charts, they get video, they understand their mortgage options in a way that is just unavailable without Mortgage Coach. This call, like all of our calls, is recorded. I mean, I do think, in the mortgage space, we have the most engaged, interactive, online place to check out videos. We have over 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel, and just this month, over almost 8,000 views of Mortgage Coach videos. So this call will be pushed. If you have not subscribed to our Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, make sure that you do so that you get these alerts. So before I bring in today's guests, I want to remind everybody I had two amazing guests last week. Sam Hansen out of the San Diego market brought in his realtor, Paul Harveau. Sam and his team are just mega producers. I mean, 200 million this year in volume, serving a lot of families. Paul is one of the top realtors in the San Diego market. And so if you missed that interview, make sure you check it out. It was recorded. It's online. To me, the big idea that I want to make sure everybody pulled out of that call was the concept of, the cross-qual, where working with listing agents to ensure that all the families they're serving are getting a Mortgage Coach total cost analysis. So if you missed that, check it out. So for today's call, I have two amazing guests. I've interviewed both these, leaders, I don't know, I think 3 to 4 times each. Kristin, welcome to the call.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Well, I'm going to give you guys a nice setup here in just a minute. And then, Ann, thanks for coming on the Mortgage Coach call again. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me back, Dave.
Great. So one more Mortgage Coach push before we get into the presentations of the day. I do want to push all mortgage coaches that are on Instagram, make sure you like our new Mortgage Coach Instagram page. I am really working hard to build the Mortgage Coach brand with realtors so that realtors are saying, hey, I want my families to get a total cost analysis. And it's more efficient, a better way of working. So we're building our Mortgage Coach Instagram page for realtors, and I encourage all mortgage coaches on this call, submit pictures. Anytime you're out delivering a Mortgage Coach experience to a family or to an agent, forward those pictures to me or share them on Instagram, and we want to bring to life what we're doing, and we want realtors to start going, I want to work with a mortgage coach. That's a better way to do business. So kind of a backstory on today's call. I have interviewed, Kristin 4 times. She's been a guest on a call. Her first call was the multinational consumer call, and the one that, I think it's over 500 views, when I had you and Dan Keller. Dan Keller, an awesome Gen X loan officer, and you really talking about how to sell to millennials. That was a huge call. And then, Ann, I've had you on 3 times. You've talked about everything from, how Gen X and millennials can connect to emotional intelligence. And I wanted to have both of you guys on a call together. So I had scheduled this call, and I really left it to Ann and Kristin to say, what do you guys want to talk about? And they presented me with this concept of what today's call is going to be about, which is, Hispanic Millennials, the next generation of real estate, and they want to make a case to the industry that we need to be more intentional and we need to do a better job of serving these families. So, Ann, I think you were going first, so I'm going to push the screen to you. If you could, kind of give everybody a little bit about your backstory and walk us through your presentation and the case that you want to make around this market opportunity.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Can everybody see my screen, Dave?
We see it.
Excellent. Great. So everybody, thank you so much. And Dave, thank you so much for inviting us back and letting Kristin and I have some fun playing with this. You really gave us free reign, and Both of us have so much experience in the industry. We talked about what's the best way to do this and to combine our information and to really leverage it to help loan officers. And what we decided to talk about was Hispanic Millennials, which is a hot, hot topic right now, not just in the financial services industry, mortgage industry, but everywhere. I was at a huge conference in the retail industry. So this is a hot, hot market, and really excited to be talking about it. So what we're going to be doing, everybody, is we're going to be going back and forth. You're going to hear a little bit from me, then we're going to pass it to Kristin, then back to me, and then to Kristin. And Dave's going to be interjecting and welcome your questions and comments along the way. So I'm going to start by talking about Gen Y and who is Gen Y, just to set the stage. Hopefully most of you know this by now. I'm just going to give you some stats, and then we're going to move into, well, what do we do when we actually segment that further into Hispanic Gen Y. So let's just do a quick check-in about who is Gen Y and what do we mean by that in terms of when we talk about Gen Y. So what you see right here, just some quick numbers for you to take in. People say, well, what does it mean? Who are they? There's really three big generations in the market right now. Traditionalist is not represented here, does not mean that they are not important. However, very few traditionalists are actually working anymore. And when we're looking at LOs and we're looking at realtors, they're really dealing with Gen Y, X, and Boomers. So we call Gen Y, also known as Millennials, born between 81 and 2001. Compare them to Gen X. Sometimes Gen X is called XZ. Sometimes they're called the Me generation. And then compare that to Boomers, who are born between 46 to 61. You can see Ys and Boomers are the two biggest generations, very similar numbers. We often call them the bookend generations. We often call Gen X the monkey in the middle, because the good news is if you're trying to reach markets, Y and Boomers are actually somewhat similar values. Boomers and Ys have a lot in common. However, Gen X is very different, and that's why we call them the monkey in the middle. So at this point, people say, all right, that's right, Ann, I remember now. We have three generations, really, that we're working with. But so what? What does that mean? And so what I want to do very quickly is just to help you understand what shaped this generation. If you've seen some of my previous ones, we talked about what shaped each generation. Now I'm just going to do a quick reminder of what shaped this particular generation. What you're looking at right now is some research that came out that says each generation is shaped by certain events: political, technological, and social. And if you understand that about each generation, you then can work with them better. You can understand them, communicate with them better. So I'm going to take you on a quick walk through history to help you remember what shapes Gen Y, otherwise known as millennials, because it's very easy for us to wear our own generational glasses and to say, oh, why do they act differently? Why are they like that? Now you can start to understand. So if we start to look at what was going on politically during this generation's time, born again between 81 and 2001, hence the name millennials, and you think about what was going on politically, socially, technology-wise, it was a very different time than the other two generations. If there's one thing that shaped this generation, it is 9/11. Doesn't mean that 9/11 didn't shape all the generations, but at this point, information is being streamed. This generation, the second biggest generation, said, what are we going to do with this? And they said, we are going to connect. Connection is a key word for this generation. So when you're working with them, make sure you are connecting with them. That's why Mortgage Coach is so great in terms of Instagram and all the ways you can connect online. However, don't forget face-to-face is also important for this generation. When you're looking at the social impact and what shaped this generation, we are now at the time of blended families. We now at the time where we have diversity all around us. And so this generation sees the world differently than the rest of the other two generations. And I want to emphasize it's not good or bad, it's not right or wrong, it's just different. And if you are working with this generation, you need to understand that so that you can put on your generational lens. So we're going to quickly just go through the events, and then I'm going to pass it to Kristin in just a minute. So what are the things that shape this generation? 9/11 sent one message to this generation, it is to connect. When we're looking at the wars and what's going on politically, you can see a very different time. But really, what does that mean? If you're going to remember one thing about this generation, I want you to remember what you're seeing right here. And these are the traits of this generation, because you need to understand that they are global citizens. They think nothing of getting advice, of talking to colleagues, even talking to people they don't know necessarily in Sao Paulo, in Shanghai, in Switzerland. And so as you think about this generation, think wide, W-I-D-E. What I mean by that is they are wide. They know a lot about a lot of things, and the globe is their world. So when they say, I want to connect, they're not just talking about connecting to their neighborhood. They're talking about connecting to the world. And what that means is that they embrace diversity. They understand diversity better than any other generation. And they expect that from you. Diversity of thought, diversity of methodology, diversity of tools, diversity of people on your team, and they want to see that. This generation is all about balance. They want to understand, how can I have a balance in my life? Now, balance to Gen X is more like a box balance, work box, play box. A box to Gen Y doesn't really exist because they live on a continuum. They're going to work and then play and then work and then play and then connect in all different ways. So as you think about this generation and you think about, how do I connect to them, and how do I even break it down to the next segment of Hispanic millennials, I want you to keep this in mind, to remember just a few things. It's about connection, balance, global diversity, and really bringing it all together through many mediums, however, primarily digital mediums, and connecting with them that way. So Dave, I'm going to hand it over to Kristin, and while we go ahead and do this share screen, just want to check in with you based on past calls, on this call, anything you want to share or add to that before we move on to understanding who are the Hispanic millennials?
I forget what a great teacher you are. So every time you come in, you net out a lot. I mean, obviously we all get a lot of articles around these macro trends, and I feel like, I don't even need to look at all that. I could just listen to you for 10 to 15 minutes, net it out. So I guess the only thing I want to say, Kristin, before you take the baton and run with it, obviously, I hate to use the word obvious, but I think we all know this trend from technology and how it's evolving the millennial. When I talk to CEOs and leaders, everybody understands that over the next 3 years, there's things we need to do, and there's a massive opportunity. I really want to hopefully make the case over the next 40 minutes that we have left. What do we need to do in Q1? What do we need to do in Q2 of 2016? So I guess I just challenge both of you. Share the big macro 3-year, 5-year trend, but also let's crush it. What do we need to be doing differently right now? So Kristin, you're up, and can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Great, thanks, Dave. Can everyone see my screen? Is that clear?
We can see your screen, and you sound great.
Great. Okay. Well, speaking of the 3 to 5 year trend, that's always what I hear when I talk about millennials is, yeah, but is it a today thing? Is it a today priority? And but today, I mean, millennials in general take over like 1 in 3 purchases, and the Hispanic millennial population now makes up 22.7 million individuals. And so, and Hispanic millennials, as we'll talk about shortly, is they're more inclined towards home ownership. So it's a really interesting segment. It's actually, Hispanic millennials are fascinating to anyone who's interested in culture or consumer trends. And as mortgage professionals, all of these factors, I mean, culture, sociology, all of that plays a big role in how you generate business and increase production in today's market because of the diversity that Anne was mentioning. So the most important thing to remember here is that Hispanic millennials are both 100% the Hispanic culture and 100% the American millennial culture. So that's what makes it very interesting. I have a friend who said something that I thought defined this market exactly perfectly. And she said, soy 100% Latina and I am 100% American. So I'm 100% Latina and I'm 100% American. So looking at this market, we'll look at both cultures and how they kind of intersect, and how you can better understand your market and increase business with this segment. First of all, 1 in 5 millennials are Hispanic. I believe the recent number is actually 27% of millennials are Hispanic. And Anne released a statistic recently, and I think I read it somewhere else, but 47% of the Hispanic population are millennials. So as a whole, the culture is very, Hispanic culture tends to be very young in the U.S. largely due to immigration, but also with the Hispanic millennials, the vast majority are U.S. born. And that trend is the younger they are, the more likely they are to be U.S. born. So again, you get that intersective culture there. And so to introduce some of the Hispanic values and trends, the first one obviously is the cultural connectedness. As I was mentioning before, they're still very strongly connected to the Hispanic culture, even though they are, like everything we talk about millennials growing up with technology and I mean, they're just like the other millennials in terms of values and trends, but they have a very strong connection to their Hispanic culture. There's a great example of just the intersection when you talk about the values in homeownership, because with millennials, they tend to value homeownership in the sense of it being a good financial investment. So if you, like when I went to buy my house, I thought this is a good financial decision. And most of my friends, people in the millennial generation, talk about it as just being just a good investment. But in the Hispanic culture, it's much more tied to the American dream as we've all known it before, which is kind of a stronger emotional connection. This is the next stage in life. I have a picture up here of a very good close friend of mine growing up, Veronica, who was from Mexico, and when she bought her home, she would say it was buying a piece of the rock, or owning a piece of the rock. And so it's something that tied her to the American dream, and of achieving homeownership was something much more important than what my generation kind of ties it to. It's very important. When I bought my house, it was a symbol of success, and it was still one of the top 5 most, memorable moments of my life, sitting at that closing table. But when in the Hispanic culture, it's emotional and tied to the traditional view of the American dream. So it's an interesting, both Hispanic millennials carry both of those values. Hispanic millennials are family oriented, even more so than non-Hispanic millennials. They are much more likely to live in multi-generational households, and that's not because they're not making enough money. The majority of Hispanic millennials living at home are contributing to the rent or the house payment, or some kind of financially in some way to the family. It's much more culturally appropriate for the whole family to live together. And as you may have found, in a traditional Hispanic applicant often is not the only actual applicant. They're usually buying the home with other members of the family, and at the very least, they have members of the family that are strong decision makers in the process. So Hispanic millennials, while they're becoming more independent, they are still very closely connected with their families. Hispanic millennials also very much value education. And this statistic was really interesting, that Hispanic millennials have higher college enrollment rates right now than non-Hispanic millennials. So they also tend to see graduate degrees as more valuable than non-Hispanic millennials. And even though they value education, they tend to have lower debt. They, on average, have $10,000 less in student loan debt than non-Hispanic millennials, which is obviously great when it comes to trying to get a mortgage. But they also culturally kind of value having less debt. And so you tend to have some barriers when it comes to having thinner credit files. Hispanic millennials are also very mobile dominant. Now, we always think about millennials being on our phones all the time, but Hispanic millennials are more mobile dominant, or more mobile than non-Hispanic millennials. They're more likely to use chat, instant messenger. Hispanic millennials feel kind of just more connected through their mobile device than they do on a laptop or traditional computer. So last thing I want to say on that is that the Hispanic millennial population is more like their parents, in the immigrant culture, it's more like they want to be less visible. They're kind of nervous coming over to the new country, and then if they weren't immigrants, it was still, the culture was to stay more hidden because of high levels of discrimination and a lot of other factors. But Hispanic millennials are very proud of their culture, like their parents, and they want others to see that. So they want to be more visible and stand out and be noticed. which is very typical of the millennial generation. And the other interesting thing is that non-Hispanic millennials also very much value Hispanic culture and are appreciating the Hispanic millennial movement towards putting their culture out there. Millennials as a whole, being extremely diverse, you're seeing them take pieces of different cultures and make them as part of our own. And Hispanic culture is definitely dominating when it comes to kind of taking pieces of different cultures in the millennial generation. So I'll pass it back over to Anne to discuss some of the marketing techniques with millennials.
Right on. So Anne, I am passing the screen to you. I will tell you, Kristin and I will tell you when you can see it. Great job, Kristin. You guys are just crushing it. You're doing a great job of not only making the case for how important this segment is, but let's also remember let's try to give some tactical ideas and strategies so we can say, hey, this trend exists, this opportunity is here. Obviously, I think you're giving us some, strategic things to help us consider, but let's try to get tactical as we go, as we get through the call here. And we can see your screen and ready to roll.
Great. So Dave, actually I have a couple questions for Kristin. I'd love to just check in before we move into the actual tactical pieces.
Of course.
Does that work for you? Great. So Kristin, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. You handled it really well in terms of presenting it. I have two questions that really jumped out at me. One is the trend number 3, that they're family oriented and that they're going to buy a home with other family members. So I'm curious, can you tell me more about that in terms of who actually signs the loan? Is it the parents are signing it and the kids are living in the house? Is it that the kids are signing it and the parents are living in the house? Like, how does that whole dynamic work financially?
Yeah, what I've actually found is that there's a lot of Hispanic millennials that are buying for their parents. So they may not even choose to live in the home long term, but they are buying the home for the family they're the primary applicant. But a lot of times there's, it's the opposite direction, and the Hispanic millennial is just contributing in some way. But definitely some of the trends I found in research, but also just kind of anecdotally, is that a lot of Hispanic millennials are getting better jobs than their parents had, and really, acculturating as second generation immigrants, and they're the ones buying the homes.
So does that mean that they're buying 2 homes? One for their parents
and
one for themselves?
No, the expectation is that down the road they likely will buy a home, 10 years down the line or whatever it is, with their kids and their family. But it's very likely they're the most likely segment to live in multi-generational homes, and so they're most often buying for their parents and then living there with their parents.
Got it.
It's not for
their another question.
Family.
Yeah. So I have another question, Dave. Just wanted to see if you want to jump in on that. Anything you want to add to that before I move to my other question?
Well, I guess the only thing I would say is we've got a lot of mortgage coach, Hispanic loan officers on this call. If anyone wants to provide a little color in the Q&A, also towards the end of the call, I would like to, have a mortgage professional who's helping a lot of Hispanic families as a mortgage coach, raise their hand and, provide some commentary. So please engage. I've already got a message from Mara saying, I've noticed in San Antonio, they want more face-to-face. So, let's have that conversation, guys. Mortgage coaches, ask questions, provide commentary, and I will bring that in as the conversation continues. Go ahead, Anne.
Great. So this is my other question, and we don't have to get into it. Maybe we can wrap at the end. But I'm very curious about the idea that they value education, higher college enrollment, and yet have lower student debt. To me, that seems like a bit of a paradox. Obviously, it depends on where they went to school and that kind of thing. But that obviously will then impact what they have then for the down payment, for the home. So, Kristin, could you tell us a little bit more about that and why there seems to be a paradox? If more going to university, why they have lower debt, and then how does that all work?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know the answer to that. The only thing I've assumed is that, and kind of seen, again, just in my own experience, is that a lot of Hispanic millennials are not choosing the top 10 schools. So a lot of the debt that is accrued by millennials is going to really expensive schools, and with Hispanic millennials, they're more likely to go after practical degrees and care less about having I think it depends on the region as well, and the city. There's a lot of different factors there, but definitely they care a lot about having less debt, because that's a cultural value, and so they're not going to choose, typically not going to choose a school that's going to put them in significant amounts of debt.
Wow, that's fascinating. So that then helps when they start to want to invest in the home and they have that money and that kind of thing. Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
Dave,
exactly.
anything you want to add in there before we jump into the marketing piece?
No, go for it.
Great. So we've talked a lot about who is Gen Y, very high level. We've talked a little bit about, and it seems like we could talk forever about the Hispanic millennial. Like, what does that mean, and what is their debt level, and what types of universities are they going to, and how are they getting the loans, and who's signing the loans, that kind of thing. So now, as Dave said, let's go more into the practical, well, I call it the so what factor. What I mean by that is, so what do I do with this? Like, this is interesting information, but how do I use this to become even more successful? Because if you're on this call, you're already successful. How do I use this information to become even more successful? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to talk about marketing to Gen Y, and then we'll pass the baton one more time, and then Kristin's going to talk about how do you market to the Hispanic Gen Y, and then wrap it all up at the Q&A at the end. So when we're talking about how do I market to Gen Y, again, we have to remember we're just talking in general about Gen Y, not necessarily about Hispanic, and I have 6 tips that I'm going to share with you. The first tip I want to share with you is called target the influencer. And what this means is we're really looking at online people, generally bloggers. It could be something like the 20-something blogger. It could be careerists. But what you want to do is you want to find these influential bloggers who are online and then target their groups by getting on there. Maybe you're writing a piece. Maybe you're sharing a video. But what you're doing is by doing that, you have all of a sudden just tapped into at least 10,000 other Gen Y bloggers. So get this group excited about what you're doing, and then they will share it. I jokingly say, but I love Gen Y. I work with a lot of Gen Y. I'm actually Gen X, but I work with almost all Gen Y. And I jokingly say that they are herd animals, H-E-R-D. And what I mean by that is they tend to go in groups. They tend to look for each other for reviews. They tend to look to each other for advice. So that's why this first tip here is so important. If you target the influencers, they will then bring the herd with them. And I see that time and time again in organizations and recruiting, that type of thing. So really important to think about who are the influencers in your area, your region, what are they writing about, and then how can you weave in real estate, finance, anything like that into the conversation. You've just tapped into a huge, huge area there. That's the first tip. Second tip I want to talk about, similar, we're moving down one level, is then we infiltrate that inner circle, right? So we target and then we infiltrate the inner circle. So what does that mean? So an example of that is there's a small startup called Captain U. And what they do is they target high school athletes going toward college. And they spent a year trying to be on Facebook, wasn't successful. Then they decided, let's go the other way. Let's go for the inner circle. They figured out that the high schoolers were their influencers, and they offered internships to this small group of high school students who then started sharing information about Captain U on their fan page, updates, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, Facebook became very successful. Their page on Facebook, they went from 100 fans to 2,000 fans in a month because they found a different way to infiltrate. So it's not enough just to put a page up on Facebook and ask for likes, right? So think about who are the influencers in my area. Back to Dave's question, maybe San Antonio, maybe it's Chicago. Who are the influencers? What are they writing about? Guarantee whatever they're writing about, you can somehow sneak real estate into the conversation. Then figure out from there who are the key people in the inner circle, and it may be one layer down like that. It may be high school to college, or it may be, for example, women who are not yet married, but figuring that out, infiltrate them. Then step 3 that I want to do is after you figure out who am I influencing and how do I infiltrate, is it's time to build a street team. And I really do mean a street team, because it's not going to be someone sitting in offices. It's not going to be about bricks and mortars. Back to Gen Y, it's about connection, and it's about the herd mentality, H-E-R-D mentality. So they aren't going to go to you for advice. They're not even necessarily going to go to me for advice. They're going to go to their friends for advice. They're going to ask their friends first, or then the next one is do online research, and then they'll come to you, because that is where they get their information from their friends. So it's really important that you think about all these things when you're thinking about how to collaborate them, and you want to work with your street team, i.e. maybe it's someone on your actual team, maybe it's an influencer, maybe it's someone who just bought a home from you and is now a client, but provide them with information. Give them pictures, give them videos, give them sneak peeks about what's going on, and let them then share the information. That is going to seem a lot more credible than you posting it. Is if the street team, i.e. the people who have the cred, and again, it could be a client, it could be a banker, it could be anybody, let them build it, and then that then influences and starts to figure out more with that inner circle. So the first three are target your influencers, infiltrate and build your street team. But then what do? Then you have to tie in with causes, because Gen Y is passionate about causes, world issues, politics, the environment. According to Diversity Inc., Gen Y is undeniably a big reason that America elected its first Black president in U.S. history. Tom's Shoes, very popular Gen Y because they give back to consumers. Gen Y also likes to give back at social events, parties, that kind of thing. So tie it into something. We have an election coming up. If you don't want to be political, I'm sure there's something going on in your region, whether it's some type of inner city rehabilitation, whether it's a school issue, whatever it may be. Once you figure out your target market and infiltrate, figure out what they are passionate about and make a tie-in to that cause. After you do that, then going right back to what Kristin says, you got to go on mobile. And especially when we're tying into Hispanic Millennials, they never leave their home without their cell phones. So what you really want to think about is, how do I use mobile with this? That's why Dave was talking earlier about getting onto Instagram, Pinterest, that kind of thing. Whatever you're doing with your cause, whoever it is that you're infiltrating in your street team, then you get it onto mobile. And then finally, the last one, it seems very simple, but I really want to keep this with you to think about, is to keep up with the trends. It's not enough to be really good at trends for this year in terms of what is hot and are we on Instagram and that kind of thing, because it's going to change. And so we cannot rest. We cannot think, oh, we got it covered. We always need to think about what's happening next, what's hot right now, what's going on in Europe, and how do I keep up with the trends. So again, as you think about what is it I need to do now that I understand who is Gen Y, understand who the Hispanic Gen Ys are, the things I really want you to remember at a practical level is, who are the influencers you want, target them, infiltrate, get your street team out there, tie it into a cause, make sure you're using mobile, and then make sure you're staying up to date and you're not resting on your laurels. So I'm going to pass the baton back now, and as I do that, Dave, would love to hear any thoughts or questions you may have before we go on to the last segment of our official presentation.
Yeah, so first of all, this has been awesome. You guys are crushing it, as I knew you would. I'm going to share a few thoughts on my screen, because between the questions that have come in, again, we're getting flooded, so keep these questions coming. It makes this call very organic. We've got a great team, 2 great leaders on the call to do it. So we're getting a lot of questions about, do they like to meet face-to-face? I mean, here's the deal. I have been interviewing some of the best loan officers, my entire adult life. And one thing I am learning is that, face-to-face meeting is still alive and well. I interviewed Marty Preston, in a small market in Kentucky, 100%, 90% of his clients are face-to-face. And he talked about how he delivered education to families. Even a lot of professional lenders that are meeting with families less than 20% of the time, there's still a lot of face-to-face connection going on. This is a great example of Joseph Sanchez in the Northern California market, having a conversation in an in-office experience. But here's the deal. At least this is my belief, and Kristin, either validate it or provide your leadership. Different markets, have different platforms. Different customers want different things. Some customers love to come in, sit knee to knee, really be educated. I mean, one thing I am positive of personally is that whenever I interview a top 1% loan officer or top 10%er, President's Club loan officer, they're great teachers. And they're great teachers wherever they communicate with families. If they have a model where they bring people into their office, they're great communicators there. If they have a model where it's all online and over the phone, they connect with people and they educate that way. So for all you mortgage coaches, I guess the point I want to make now is be intentional. And as a mortgage coach, you can deliver a great teaching experience regardless of whether it's in person and you're driving that in-person experience, or whether you send a link to the family, you made a video so that the family understands their options, which, by the way, I did put a couple links to samples of mortgage coach reports in Spanish. So not only are you giving the millennial something in their native language digital because they live on mobile, but you spoke, Spanish to that family. So for all you mortgage coaches, I would like to have a conversation. Please let me know how many of you out there, what your percentage is. I want to know what percent is face-to-face and what percent is in person. I might even push a poll question that I really want to know where you're at right now. And again, I want everybody who's helping, Hispanic families to weigh in when I do push that poll question. So Kristin, also, I do want to make sure you integrate into this next time you provide leadership. I've been getting a lot of questions on, are there any courses available that will help me as a mortgage professional and as someone that wants to specialize in this market? So if you could integrate that into your conversation, provide educational opportunities for any mortgage coach members on the call. And
yeah, absolutely.
With that said, Kristin, I'll let you know when I can see your screen.
Okay, great. All right. So one of the things that I love about the mortgage coach community is just how you really do, at least in my experience with you guys, that I've seen you guys really care about understanding your customers and making changes to make sure that your message is communicated appropriately and most effectively. So I love that, and it's more important than ever in our industry. But trends really do matter. When I was and understanding how people communicate really does matter. The message stays the same. It's just the way that you communicate it and the channels you use are really critical. And the more you can understand your customer segments and how they prefer to be communicated with, the more effective you are in increasing production and referrals with those customers. When I was a social worker, I found this is when I got really interested in all of this. I had been working with a customer, Hispanic client. I mostly worked with non-English speaking clients, and she wouldn't talk to me about anything, but most of my non-Hispanic clients wanted to just chat the whole time but get through the process really quickly. She would never open up to me, and so it was very difficult. But when I studied the Hispanic culture more in depth and understood that that it was great if you could start by just talking about their family and kind of some personal information rather than jumping right into business, then she immediately opened up and shared a lot of information, and we got through our appointments a lot faster than we had previously with more accurate information. So that's how important it is to understand your customer's culture. And that really plays into when we're talking about marketing, because that's all about communication. But first of all, when we think of marketing, traditional marketing really is dead across the board. We talked about this in another call I was on. Dave brought up this article called Marketing is Dead and Loyalty Killed It in the Harvard Business Review, and they articulate this message really well. The idea is that we're not going to go get business just because we see an ad pop across our screen. We're, as a generation and just as a whole, we're more likely to go after business or do business with someone that someone referred us to. And that is really apparent in the Hispanic millennial population. It is all about developing brand loyalty with Hispanic millennials. And the way to do that, first of all, is build relationships. It's really key with non-Hispanic millennials, especially in the Hispanic population, building trust and helping to just kind of right off the bat, like I said before, develop that relationship and have some kind of personal time with them before you get down to business will really seal that relationship and help improve your overall kind of retention of customers. And some of the ways to do that is also to connect with local realtors and different associations, community groups, Obviously, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, NAHREP, is a great organization to connect with if you have a chapter in your area. But you want to think about all of the influencers like Anne was talking about before. And then celebration. This is me sitting at the closing table 3 years ago, I guess, and I love to celebrate. I mean, millennials as a whole, we like to have a good time, but Hispanic millennials really like to celebrate. And I mean, celebration is a big part of the Hispanic culture. And so you really want to think about that when you're closing the deal on someone's first home, especially. That's such a big moment. For me, my realtor took this photo, posted on social media, and it was a really big deal. It like sealed the relationship between me and him. I mean, for him to be there with me, I'd wish my loan officer was there with me to share in that incredible moment. So take advantage of that. And I mean, really feel that relationship with them. They will be your marketing. I mean, your customers, especially millennials and Hispanic millennials, will do your marketing much better than you could ever do it. And it doesn't cost you that much to really send a gift at closing, be there at closing. That would be awesome. But just take advantage of that moment. Secondly, consider family involvement. You want to think about all of those influencers and decision makers that are involved. It's more than just the applicant. And you think about kind of worldview differences here. Hispanic culture is coming from a collectivistic worldview, meaning that they are much more tied to the family and group than our American typical individualistic culture. So Hispanic millennials are more likely to feel part of the family and connected in the community, whereas non-Hispanic millennials, we've been told our whole life that we're special and unique and set apart. And so I think there's a difference there that's really critical. But especially whenever you're communicating all the information to your Hispanic millennial clients, think about how that message is going to be communicated to their parents or their grandparents or aunts, other people that are involved. And while the vast majority of Hispanic millennials speak fluent English and prefer English, there's only, in fact, 4% that watch Spanish TV. So English is going to be dominant, but what is the first language of the other decision makers involved? And also you want to include some Spanish if you're really targeting this population. They value the fact that you're demonstrating value for their culture. So this statistic was interesting that 42% of Hispanics reported they're more loyal to companies who advertise in Spanish. So it may not be that that's even their first language or that they necessarily always speak Spanish, but it shows that you're demonstrating that you value them and where they're coming from. But also think through how you can communicate to the other decision makers. So using Mortgage Coach, you have the opportunity to use the tools you have to be able to articulate that through graphs, through the numbers, the information that people can really consume at any level. And if you do speak Spanish, definitely utilize the video to speak Spanish and offer a video in English and in Spanish so that they can communicate that to share it with other family members. That will give them such an incredible customer experience.
Kristin, before you jump off that slide, yeah, I did. I wanted to just emphasize, I mean, there's no doubt getting knee-to-knee with a family and connecting on an emotional level, there is no substitute. There never will be a substitute for that. That is the best way to build relationship, connection, obviously. But in the event that you're unable to meet with the family, let's say you met with the family knee-to-knee, you connected with a husband, maybe you connected with a husband and wife, there's still more people involved in that mortgage decision. So being able to give them a link, being able to add a video that netted it out, it's a great add-on to a great face-to-face meeting. And if you are doing business with someone and you don't get the chance to meet with them in person, and there's multiple decision makers, to be able to forward that link, everybody has access to it on the device that they want. One member of the family might have an iPhone, one member of the family might have an Android, and someone else is on a desktop. Everybody's getting your numbers in a visual way, and they're getting that video, and they're hearing it directly from the loan officer. So again, I just can't emphasize enough, and I am going to push a poll question in a minute because I do want to know what percentage of families are you meeting with face-to-face versus online. I do want to, with this audience, I want to know the answer to that. Also, Kristin, I noticed Joseph Sanchez, who's a mortgage coach loan officer in Northern California, raised his hand. So Joseph, I'm going to bring you in a few minutes when Kristin is done sharing. So stay tuned for that, Joseph. You'll be on in just a minute. And Kristin, keep rolling.
Great. So going from communication in Spanish, which again, the more you can get the family involved, invite them in for an initial meeting and obviously a closing involving them, but also think about how millennials communicate. And we want efficiency in that communication. So while I completely agree that the Hispanic millennial population tends to want more face-to-face, they still want more mobile interaction as well. They want efficient communication. As millennials, we've grown up with access to information at our fingertips at all times, and we text and we use a million different apps to message each other. So you got to get on the same level in order to just meet us where we're at. So if you can utilize that, and also as consumers, we're used to being in control of every purchase. We know what's going on. When I order pizza, I know when the pepper based on my pizza. I mean, I have complete knowledge of where everything's going in the process. But when it comes to mortgage, a lot of times we're completely in the dark. So the more you can communicate, send a text over and just say, hey, so-and-so just touched your loan and we're on track. I mean, it seems simple and like it's not important, but with millennials and Hispanic millennials, the more transparent you are and the more efficient you are with your communication, the better experience we're going to feel we've had with you. And then also consider social media. And that's a very important element to any marketing strategy. It's really more of a branding strategy, though. You're kind of putting information out there. Don't put any sales pitches out there. Just telling people what you're about. But also, in your personal social media, make sure that you are you're aware that most customers will look you up on social media. Before I do business with someone, especially as important as that, I'm going to look them up and just see what kind of person they are. So just be aware that we might stalk you a little bit, and whatever you've got on there might be, you just want to make sure you are ready for that. Fourth, be authentic and informative. And this is seriously so key. And what's awesome about today's marketing is it's not about having the right sales tactic or just the way to get them in the door. It's about just being yourself. And so the more authentic you are and information forward, the better you're going to be with this target segment. I posted this actually on the Mortgage Coach wall at one point, but I just thought this articulated that message so well. Transparency beats honesty. I was doing a presentation one time, someone said, the difference between transparency and honesty is that transparency is honesty is when you ask me and I'll tell you. Transparency is when I'll tell you without being asked. So the transparent loan officers are the ones that stand out as excellent above all the others. In today's market, we have a million different options, and you have to figure out what makes you stand out among the others. And it's going to be people telling other people about how awesome you are. The more transparent you are and the more information you provide, and the better you communicate to your customers, the more likely that message is going to be communicated to everyone else. Lastly, make sure that your entire workforce, I mean, not just loan officers, but also underwriters, everyone's kind of on board. So if you have influence in this decision, it's really important to make sure that everyone is understanding the segment. In previous generations and just in previous years, the majority was the majority, and you had kind of general trends that you could watch. But today, we have a very diverse set of customers, which comes with very diverse customer needs. And so training is really critical. Recruitment for a diverse workforce, the more Hispanics you have on board, the more Hispanics you're going to be able to recruit, and just kind of think about those three key segments that all help you increase production with the home buyer, which is the loan officer and the realtor and the home buyer itself. So, and then lastly, employee engagement is really critical for retention as well.
Awesome.
So in today's market, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, got a couple of things closing out. But Hispanic millennials are shaping the broader culture. They should be at the center of the brand. It's not just a niche segment. In fact, I wouldn't even say that. I would say that they are influencing the broader culture, and we have to pay attention to these trends. So one thing in our industry, when I actually search for this image, mortgage bankers, and this is what pops up. I'm not saying any of you look like this, but I'm saying that as an industry, we have a little bit of a branding issue. We need to be able to, you guys have incredible value and so much to offer, especially, I mean, mortgage coach community, I really believe in. And I think that the better you can communicate who you are and your value first, the better off you're going to be able to be in capturing this market moving forward. So Hispanic millennials are moving. We're all moving forward and kind of taking a good piece of the home ownership pie. And so I'd love for all of you to be involved. I'm going to talk really briefly about the millennial map that we're offering, but do you have any other thoughts before I move forward?
No, again, I love what you're doing. You bring great leadership to the mortgage industry. Can't wait for you to share your millennial map. Manny, I am going to unmute you in just a couple minutes, so be on standby and share this great educational opportunity that you're putting out there, Kristin.
Oh, I want to make sure we have plenty of time, but just briefly, we're launching a millennial map market access plan this January that I'm really excited about. It kind of brings together all of the training and education as well as tangible marketing materials so that we can empower loan officers to really go out and capture this market. So we do that through multimedia training and tools through text, video, and just different platforms to be able to make it as easy as possible, like turnkey solution to reaching the millennial market and looking at all of the key segments, the home buyer, loan officer, and realtor, really bridging those gaps and helping to create a connection that's actually impactful. So if you'd like more information, I'd love to offer that to you, but also just separately, I would love to be a resource to anyone at any time. I love doing what I do and would love to help anyone if I can be a resource for you.
Yeah, well, make sure, Kristin, if you could put your email address in chat in just a second.
Yeah,
again,
sure.
I believe in both of these leaders, tremendous resources. Make sure you reach out and connect with Ann. Make sure you connect with Kristin. Follow her on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all you executives on this call, let's face it, attracting great millennial loan officers is a priority. And in this particular segment's case, attracting great millennial Hispanic loan officers is a priority for every executive I talk to with a large lending platform. So, hey, Manny, I did unmute you. Folks, we have Manny Corral. He's was recognized as the #1 Hispanic loan officer in America. I think you've helped over, on average, 300 plus families a year. Manny, you've been unmuted. Anything you want to share with the mortgage coach community? Yeah, I hope I unmuted Manny. All right. Well, Manny, raise your hand in the GoToMeeting panel if you can, and we'll bring him in a minute. So again, I want to share my screen. I want to wrap up a few thoughts for folks on this call. I also do want to push that survey question that I had asked earlier. How often do you meet your families in person? Is this something never? 0 to 20%. I want to get a feel for the folks that are on this call right now. What percentage of the time do you meet? And again, I'm not here to say, well, one is better than the other. Meeting someone in person is always, the best way to connect. And, I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here that regardless of where you're meeting, do your best to educate, and I do think all the best loan officers in every segment, with every focus, with every specialty, they're always the best teachers. I wrote a blog post around how the 1% are the best teachers. Check that out on LinkedIn. I posted that last week. So let's see. The polls are out. More than 50% have voted. And Kristin and Ann, check out the results. Looks like very few say never. 17% say less than 25%. 27% practically 100% of the time. And when you really look at this, more than 50% are meeting with families more than 50% of the time. Any commentary from either one of you on that?
This is Ann. I'll jump in real quick before Kristin does. So yes, we do want to meet in person. And don't forget, though, before they meet you in person. This generation has stalked you, to use Kristin's language, has checked you out, and has asked about you online and with their peers. So yes, they will meet with you, but they're going to do all that work ahead of time. So how you present to them is very different. It's not like, this is who I am and this is what I do. They already know all that. So when you meet with this generation, make sure that you are assuming that and you're starting the conversation from that place when you meet in person.
Yeah, and I think that in person is awesome and great with this segment, but just remember that it doesn't stop there. It's going to be that and mobile communication.
Great. Great. So, hey, by the way, I can see Manny trying to get in. Manny, I cannot unmute you until you put a pen, #645# into your phone. So if you could put that into your telephone, #6545, we'll get a little commentary from you. So Mortgage Coach, while we're trying to get Manny in to provide some perspective from the trenches, I think this quote, I mean, well, there's been a lot of great takeaways. If we all just think about this for a while, hopefully you can see it on my screen. Transparency beats honesty. That means you can't wait until someone asks you the question. You just bring transparency at the front end of the process. So we've made it easier than ever for you to bring transparency to every family that you serve, especially with TRID. We've got new requirements showing the cost over 5 years, showing TIP. Mortgage Coach, TCA, is a great way to bring transparency to families in a very proactive way. So, Manny, let's try it again. Hey, there you are, my friend.
Awesome, brother.
Yeah, so hey, it was good seeing you a couple months at your sales rally. If you could just give a little bit of backstory on the markets you serve, and then knowing that you've been on this call with Kristin and Ann, any wisdom you want to share with the Mortgage Coach community?
Well, Kristin did a great job, man. She was awesome. Great job presenting. And I got to tell you that she was right on. When we bring in these Hispanic borrowers, they come in with a family. They'll come in with 6 or 7 people. Man, our conference room is always full, and they'll bring in the kids to speak on behalf of the parents. Even when the parents speak English fluently, they still want to hear a portion of it in Spanish. So, we've got our Spanish-speaking production team here that does a great job. My right-hand guy is Ruben Flores. He speaks beautiful Spanish, and, we make it work. Lots of co-signing, lots of co-signers, co-borrowers. This is just part of the culture.
How many families are you helping a year, make a mortgage decision? And then also, what percentage are you doing a rent versus own analysis, so you're really helping make the case of homeownership, versus, what are the most common Mortgage Coach scenarios and strategies that you're driving out there?
Well, number one, we got to talk to you about the Spanish-speaking version that you talked about.
Yeah.
That's going to be big. Number one, that's going to be massive. But I sent you an answer on your poll. We meet with about 95% of our buyers in person. And some of our Hispanic borrowers, I shared this with you previously, don't even have email. They have cell phones, but basically a lot of them don't have email, or the kids have cell phones. And so that's how we email the parents. We email the parents to the kids in many cases. But we're helping, this year we're probably going to help about 385 families, and I would venture to say that 70 to 75% of them are Hispanic.
Wow. Well, you're definitely out there innovating. If you could share, knowing that we have so many mortgage coaches on the call, and one of the biggest struggles I always have is that, delivering the Mortgage Coach advice with the Mortgage Coach TCA, it's a high priority. What advice do you have? What percentage of the families should be getting a total cost analysis, a link via mobile, via email? Is it something you should do for some of them, or something you should do for all of them?
No, we should be doing it for everybody. You know that I'm newer to Mortgage Coach, so I'm just getting on board. But I have to tell you that we put some together, and it takes a little explaining in the Hispanic market, but you can put something together really simply and just walk them through it, and they're going to get it, especially when you're saving somebody money.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Manny, thanks for taking time. I know you come to a lot of these calls. Always appreciate the value you bring, and thanks for being a great leader with Mortgage Coach. with not only your company, but in the greater mortgage coach community. So I really appreciate it.
Hey,
So
my pleasure.
yeah, so hey, Ann, I want to make sure everybody gets your contact information. We provided Kristin's. Ann has provided a lot of leadership to the mortgage coach community. She's a great speaker. Both of these women are amazing presenters. They not only have great content that's actionable, they just bring a lot of energy to any conference, any sales rally. So Ann, if you could provide your contact information for anybody that wants to connect with you outside the call, and then Kristin, make sure. Oh, Kristin already did. She put it in chat below. Oh, and so did Ann.
So did Ann. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good. So
We're
Ann,
ahead of you, Dave.
I know. I should know better than the question. And by the way, Ann's cheat sheet, I still have that on my desk. So from the very first time you spoke, that cheat sheet you created was awesome. Everybody send Ann an email, connect with her online. Both of you, thank you so much for the value. I want to remind every mortgage coach, not only do we power mortgage education with technology, we're passionate about educating you how to use our tools and how to have a more educational conversation with buyers. So every Monday, if you have not created 20 TCAs yet, come to our Monday training. If you have created more than 20, every Tuesday I am delivering my goal is the best sales meeting in the mortgage industry every single week. Every Wednesday, it's all about mobile, because I do believe that we're all doing life on mobile devices, and I do believe that the mortgage industry needs to get with it. Obviously, millennials are digital natives. They can teach the class. But all the Xers, all the boomers, you need to learn to use your mobile devices more strategically to educate families and to have a competitive differentiation with realtors. So I am teaching that every single Wednesday. It's a core thing at Mortgage Coach, and I've got recorded versions of it. So check that out. So I am going to push the survey question. Let us know what you thought of today's call. If you are a guest on this call and you want to learn more about Mortgage Coach, answer the bottom question. I'd like to get a demo on Mortgage Coach. So please, as you leave and wrap up, let us know what you thought of today's call. Kristin, any final words before we wrap it up? I'll give you the final thought.
Well, thank you very much for having us on the call. This is great, and I think it's really critical that we start paying attention as an industry to cultural trends and just move forward with the way that consumers are headed, which is multicultural.
Yeah, you heard it. So thank you again, Kristin and Ann. Really appreciate the time you took to prepare for this and the value that you gave. Everybody in the mortgage coach industry, have an awesome week. Make sure every family you meet with understands their options and do it in a way that's a competitive advantage. Take care, everybody.